Yeah.
Okay. All
It
right.
needs to be
So
well lit. If you're well lit, it works really well.
I don't know why you're using VR in the dark, buddy, but um,
Yeah. Bit hard to
um,
use.
I know. So um, I had a couple of sort of side points that I wanted to clear out the way. Um, if it seems like actually, I'm sorry, I can bring these up while I'm talking, so I'll do that instead. I also had an idea to run by you that the testing framework may not need to be strictly just for exercising agents. Like, for example, could you put in the ERD about the Dreamcatcher and then ask it a scenario like question where you're like, hey, so, I got this company called XYZ and I have an employee that does this and that. And then part of the testing framework could sort of turn that into a standard form story and confirm that some of the expectations are true. So, for example, if I put to you what I'm about to put to you now is a corporate structure involving registering an entity in Delaware, setting up this company, that company with jurisdictional restrictions and whatever. And so, if I say to you, well, if I lay out a story of how a scammer might try to launder money through our system, then I would expect that as a test, that's a scenario, and the bot should be able to say from the corporate architecture diagram how that would be caught or stopped, and that's one of the tests. You know what I mean? Like the test doesn't need to be for um, an agent like what we were using. It could be to test a structural component, like how we register our entities, and the test could be the properties that we want out of the structure, so that we can alter the design of the corporate structure to make some of the tests pass. Because the bot's like, oh look, I don't know how you'd stop money laundering if you were doing it this way versus that way.
That's a really interesting idea. I mean, the format of the test is NL,
Yeah,
and therefore very flexible. It
yeah,
comes almost free for because people were basically AIs as far as the system's concerned. So you could do a test. Say your accountant tries to launder crypto through the system,
right,
and we expect it to say no.
right, and give some reasoning why, and then the expectations were like it was deemed impossible. It took less than X days to complete or
Or we've got a
detect.
business rule saying we don't launder money.
Well,
Um,
it wouldn't be as cut and dry as that. It'd be more like it's about the how. It's like if someone tried to launder money, and then you could expand it with things like try and launder money using this system, and
yeah.
then it would sort of generate entry points or scenarios that could be attempted to launder money, and it would highlight the weaknesses in your structure in detecting those kinds of behaviors, perhaps.
Oh well. Yeah, I was a bit flippant on the. We don't allow you to launder money. You need to define that, of course. And what does launder mean?
Yeah.
But
All right.
what we could say is, we don't accept any money into the company that's not been invoiced from an external company with a company registration number. We don't allow any off any. output of cash in this example. We don't allow any output of cash unless it is attached to a contract. And then you could say, as a test, the accountant tries to, put in $100,000 and then extract $100,000. It's like, well, no, because you got
Yeah,
time
must be
requirements
there
there.
must be a large number of known money laundering strategies, and known.
Unfortunately, I don't know any of them, but I'd
Oh, I
love to
never
know
actually
some.
thought to. Well, I never thought to go
I
look at
think
them.
owning a restaurant or a massage parlor seems to be a good one, but other than that,
Yeah, I
mm,
overhear some of the conversations. One of the guys in my office works for Binance, and he's
mm,
on the basically the fraud detection and detecting money laundering. And I overhear some of his conversations, and I'm like, oh, that's a
well,
really sneaky
that's
way to try and do
it's an
this.
interesting. My bank has a really keen sense of this, in that every now and again, uh, for example, fly to Minx and you try and use your card, and it goes,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
is this you? It's like, what are you doing in Minx?
Well,
So
I'm
there must be
minding my own
rules to
business.
this.
What are you doing in London?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the point being that there must be rules there. Now,
It
you were
wasn't
talking
so
about
much. It wasn't so
modeling.
much the rules. It was more the fact that having a intelligent system that has a design for something, the tests can be used to verify the design more than just we were trying to use the test to verify agent behavior, but
Yeah,
actually we can use it to define a plan, a business plan, or a sequence of events, something how we're planning to go about doing something, and ask questions about it. Then those questions or those tests can be purposefully refined to be deduplicated so that they come down to something standard. And so when every time I talk about the Dreamcatcher, the type of conversation immediately becomes one of scenario giving, where the other person gives me scenarios and asks what would happen in it. And so, if we had a
that's
bot that could
that's
answer
interesting.
that question and it could turn any scenario question into a standard form question, and it knew that we'd tested all of these sort of normalized scenario tests and we had a structure that answered passed every single one of those, then it can talk back to you in a meaningful way. But moreover,
Hmm.
if we can use the test to specify what the corporate structure needs to be, then we don't have to solve the corporate structure. We can just publish it and be like, this is as far as we got with it. Can we please have someone figure out how to either add to the test or give us a corporate structure that meets these requirements? Because you and I have a bunch of requirements, but we've never written them down anywhere. The testing is a way for us to get that out of our heads and into the system, you know?
Yes, I really like this. Give me a second. Let's think about this. So, um, at the trivial level, okay. So the example you give sounds complex, but I think we can break that down. Um, Already, what we can do with what we have, I was doing it very briefly this morning before I was so rudely interrupted by
So,
actors who remain unnamed. Um,
starts with ends in Hewitt.
I'd got the latest definitions and stick it in the ERD, and it's like, right, okay, and they were saying, um, uh, are there any connections? Are there any entities that don't have connections? And it asked me something like, it was interesting actually. I think I've still got it on the screen here. You haven't stated what the permissions are. Now, remember, the CreatorBot was there to create Trucking Bot. And now we're saying, well, I just threw it in to see what happened. Creating Dreamcatcher, you cannot imagine a more different aspect. And the first thing was you haven't created permissions. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. So it's like, well, what what actions are in the definitions that assume the permissions? Okay, so it came up with a whole bunch. It's like, oh, there's the permissions which are implied. And then I asked an interesting thing, which was, are there any routes through this ERD that allows someone to do something that it shouldn't without
Right.
saying what shouldn't is? Now,
Right.
you could turn that into a test. You could say, uh, I'm a contributor and I try and do something weird, define weird,
Yeah.
and it should come back as fail.
Yes. Yes. And you can make that a test. And in that
Yeah,
way, it allows us to rapidly theorize about or evaluate different structures that we might want to implement. And we can just have a large number of tests run. And it's like good, bad, no, yes, whatever.
yeah, and being NL, you can be quite vague about it. So you
Yeah.
could say fail and then explain your thinking, and then you look at
Yeah.
it going, no, that's
Yeah,
fine.
so
Turn
what
that into a
I was
business rule.
hoping to do is I'll show you the corporate structure that I've come up with
Hmm.
and see how you respond to it and whether or not you think it meets everything. And I guarantee you what you'll say back is going to be a scenario, a set of scenarios that you are either unclear or can see are
Hmm.
failed by this setup, right? And so if we can then capture those scenarios and build up this test framework for whatever corporate structure we launch with, we can start
Right.
to, right, like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. Because these are advisories, really, aren't they? Because it's not going to fail a deploy because the deploy is to do with coherence
right.
and well, it does what you tell it to do.
It's going to
But
fail like a model, like it's like
yeah,
a model that we're working on, and it's got failures, but it also lets us get requirements. But most importantly, once it passes, there's got to be a way to churn those tests into a help bot where the help bot knows about the test outcomes. It doesn't have to run all the tests to know the outcome of the tests and the inputs, and it can answer questions based on whether the question looks like a test or not.
yeah, exactly. What happens if I add in Auntie Jane as a bookkeeper and she's in Puerto Rico?
Mm,
Um, you run that and you go, well, you're going to fail your audit because you got an audit requirement that the accountant needs to be an accountant and not a bookkeeper and also
yeah,
needs to be in this country. That sort
right,
of thing.
right. And
Yeah.
those rules start to feel to me like a software program where as soon as you get more than a couple of pages of code, it's too complex to keep it all in your head. And so you need those tests to be,
Yeah.
like I can't remember how all of the parts work in Artifact, but I know that I tested each of them thoroughly, and by looking at the tests, I can sort of reload into RAM what the thinking was around it, and so
Right.
it is with
Right.
with a suitably
Which is
complex corporate structure.
exactly, which is the advisory. It's like, yeah, of course you can't use your auntie in Puerto Rico because of this. That's, it's the advisory. You failed because of that. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I said that 2 years ago, didn't I?
Right, years ago,
Yeah.
years ago. All right, so what I've got here is a second tool. I promise you this will all come together in a bit, but
Hmm.
I found the tool that Stripe used to make that
Oh, the fluid diagram thing.
the flowy diagram thing. You got it. That's the thing. So they use this library called React Flow, and what it looks like actually is a way that you can sort of make flowcharts, but you can drag and drop and do
Oh, that usual
interesting.
nice stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it occurred to me that we could have this component because the thing with Mermaid is that it's nice, but it's only text. And if I want to just have a play around, it's not so easy. Plus, I can't change the presentation of it because often people will change the layout of a chart to make more
Mm-hmm.
sense to them in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just wondered if we couldn't generate because the format required to specify this, a bot could trivially do to and from Mermaid. So we could
You
have,
can translate it.
yeah,
Because the bot likes text.
yeah,
People
and
don't like text.
that's right. And so would be the human can mess this around, change the layout. The bot doesn't care about that; it just gets saved. But can also change the topography of the flowchart, and also can chat up individual things. Like if I'm in the chat and I say, "Add me a new node," it should just go punk and just pop up, you know. And then if I'm like, connect that node to the main node, and then the thing should just go dunk. But I should also be able to do that in the editor. So that's what I was thinking about that.
That'd be lovely. More complex. It's like we've just added in a new AI agent into this. Here's what it does. Here's the definition. Add it into the chart.
Yeah, and so it might be a better way to present it without. It doesn't seem like very much extra work, but it would certainly help to feel like this is a better way to edit a flowchart from a human's point of view than a mermaid chart, because the mermaid chart is disconnected from the human. The human can never really edit it directly, but this thing you can. So
the only thing I'd say about that is we want to go from definitions every time. So
right.
if a human's messing up with this, we're going from chart to ERD to definitions.
No, this is not for ERD. This is for workflows. This would only be for workflows, not for the ERD.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
The ERD is not this, but when it comes to workflows,
no definitions change.
Definitions are set. Yeah, you're just pulling in from definitions to use this chart.
Yeah.
But the reason why I wanted to call this chart to attention is that being able to define scenarios of like, Alice sends Bob $100, blah, blah, blah. Like being able to generate diagrams like what Stripe has here, but just do it on the fly and for a user's particular question. Like that seemed pretty useful.
So then we've got kind of a multi-step story.
Yeah, and the story can be staged. So it would be like it would create a user Bob. Then step 2, it would send money to the platform. Step 3, the platform would disperse the payments to all the contributors. So it's sort of like a way to take a scenario and then graphically show it. Because the feeling you get when you see a story being described step by step, but then when you see it in a live diagram like this, it's quite delightful. You're like, oh, I get it now. And then you can see how you should be able to talk about a scenario, and then it's like, oh, that's the platform collects payments scenario. Let me show you how that works. And then the chat carries on, but it's been able to give you this little diagram. And the reason I'm poking at it is because educating people quickly as to how the Dreamcatcher works and making it feel simple to them is, I think, an important part of what we have to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. This would be it's kind of non-core, but very useful.
Yeah, that's the trouble, It's non-core. But, I would find it helpful for me anyway, just to understand. I think, obviously, as always, I will have to make do with the shitty form of everything and just deal with mermaid diagrams. But,
well, interesting enough, remember a few calls ago I was talking about generating synthetic tests as something you can put your eye down so you can edit it, as opposed to, just come up with it on the fly in the meat brain. And I stopped at kind of 4 levels. It's like, okay, now I want an interaction with 4 different entities and be creative about it. But having a flowchart like that would allow that sort of thing. So Mrs. Miggins does X, customer agent does Y.
Hmm.
This happens, that happens, and just run that as a scenario, and maybe that is a test. Because you could easily put in, okay, so it needs to work or it needs to not work. I quite like that.
It is non-core. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
It just seemed, yeah. Anyway, where I was trying to get to is that I think I came up with a top level view of what the Dreamcatcher business model is in the language of Stripe. So, one of the issues we're going to have is we go to Stripe and they're like, what's your business model? And we're like, well, blah, 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 decentralized, blah, 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 blockchain, blah, 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 crypto. And they're like, what the hell? How about no? And so being able to define what our core business model is, or at least our starting business model, in Stripe's language, and making sure we understand that is why I've been expending this effort here. So,
and the underlying language that Stripe uses, you're saying that can be easily translated. I'm guessing it means it's complete and correct.
their language?
Yeah, so exporting, that flowchart. Exporting that flowchart and then get it translated is not going to be an issue, is what you're saying, I think. All right.
I'm sorry, I missed what you meant.
The
Which flowchart?
The nice one that you're pulling things around with
The fancy one?
and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
This thing?
Yeah. Underneath that, there is some kind of self-coherent language that we can translate.
Yeah, it's dead simple. It's just nodes, edges, and what they're connected to by their IDs. It would be trivial to map that to and from Mermaid for the purposes of presenting in a document or an email or something.
Yeah, fine.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so we missed an AI.
Oh.
The QA AI is would you mind terribly if I just read this out? I know that sounds lame, but I'll
Go for it.
I'll read it, and if you just feel free to interrupt me when you spot something funny. The core of the Dreamcatcher is the AI governance system of ambient attribution. This is an LLM-powered system that determines three things for every consumption transaction on the platform. What is the impact of the consumption? Given that impact, what's the price that it should be charged? And given the impact and the consumption and the contributions to create that impact, what's the attribution due to each contributor? The second AI governance system is the quality assurance system that determines when work has been completed of a sufficient quality. The reason is that our platform appears to have a duality. It's got these two modes. It's got the construction mode, or the producing mode, and it's got the consuming mode. And those two modes, we need to be very careful and tight how we define them. All the other AI systems that we've ever talked about are assistive, whereas these four, I can't think of any others that we've really been promoting or working towards, but these four are decision making or governance. They control people, whereas the other things are AI helps people and does what they want. These systems tell people what's happening, like force it. They dictate in a way. The money flows that I've made here, I just said that really there's two modes of activity. One is consuming software and the other is constructing software. And of the consuming software, it's presented in two ways, either internally on our platform or from a third-party storefront, which faces the general public.
Mm-hmm.
In the consumption model, a buyer purchases software services or consumes software, which involves cloud compute plus prompt engineering plus code. The platform takes in that money, and then at a later date, it accumulates all that due against the contributors to whom it is being assigned to.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some later date, once the amount has reached a withdrawable amount, the contributors can, at whim, withdraw from the platform into their own bank accounts or financial services and do what they like with their money.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Now, the second mode is software construction, where I've called the people who want the construction to happen clients, because I wanted to, if we call it funder or investor, it is closer to a client wanting a project done than it is to a funder or an investor during the software construction phase.
Mm-hmm.
So the clients send their money to the platform. There's a long list of forbidden businesses on Stripe. Escrow services is one of them. So I think that they mean there's a distinction between escrow for something that you control versus escrow on behalf, where you are independent from the two parties. I can see why that would be contentious. But so here, the gateway company needs to actually be responsible for the software that goes out, because it can't be the platform simply passing through the responsibility to the workers. It needs to be the platform is responsible in this position. Otherwise, Stripe will be suspicious of what's going on. And fair enough too, because that actually, what if there's a dispute where client 1 wants to dispute worker 2? Now Stripe gets caught in the middle of that because
it's like eBay, isn't it?
Yeah,
workers wrong.
Right.
That sort of thing.
Right. And so Stripe doesn't want to deal with that. So, but if we, the entity, it's like, no, the client paid the platform to get the work done, and the workers worked for the platform to get the work done, and the platform takes the liability. Like, the buck stops with the platform. The platform is I think it's called the business of record,
Okay.
which does put some extra burdens on the entity, but we'll get to that in a minute. And the third option, which is a derivative of the consumption model, is the storefront model. And in this case, there's a storefront that's like a company website on the public internet. Customers, like it might be the trucking company's customers, come into that storefront. They have a relationship, or they think they have a relationship with the company storefront. And then because the platform does the payment processing through Stripe, it ends up in this model. So the customer thinks they pay the storefront, but then a cut goes off to the platform.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and then when it goes into the platform, the storefront just looks like a buyer, and off it all goes. The key thing I want to talk with you about is that what it splits out the attribution to, it's almost like the wording's wrong. Like, it's not contributor. It's because the client and the workers, because workers covers all forms of innovation, other than putting money in. Once the work is done, the client and the worker become the same group of people, even though their contributions are still stored as being different, but they become the same group. They look like sellers because it was their thing that they made together that is now being consumed by the buyer. And so this seems to be all good if we register a company in Delaware and we get full access to the Stripe platform. The contributors, if the platform is registered in America, and only if it's registered in America, the contributors can be paid out almost worldwide to like 100 different, or like 50 different countries. Most countries you can be paid out to. All of the, obviously the payment processing comes at a fee, but the KYC and the AML is all done by Stripe, because for a contributor to get paid out, they have to go through the Stripe sign-up flow to prove their identity and all that. And then now they're able to withdraw their funds from the platform.
Right. Yeah.
The rub comes when the seller group starts trading the pieces of the consumable that they made. When they start trading that amongst themselves, that's when we have to be very, very careful how that is portrayed to Stripe and to the participants, because that looks like something suspicious.
Wouldn't it be entirely internal? All we're doing is redirecting to special events. We're changing. Seller 1 has a widget.
Yeah.
Seller 2.
That's what we've done. It when Seller 1 sold that widget, who paid who and how?
Right. So that
because at that point it might become treated like a digital asset.
Yeah, well, it is. What's the downside of being treated as a digital asset?
It can land you on the forbidden business list of Stripe.
Oh.
And so Stripe allows you to do that if you own the assets that are being traded, right? So that means that the platform has to hold the ownership of the NFT. And now that's a little bit complicated, because it's like, well, now this.
What does Stripe say about licensing, selling licenses? Because ownership is one thing, but you can own something outright and then give one other person, in exchange for cash, the sole license to use it in any way they want. So effectively, it's transferred ownership.
That's a good point. They don't say anything about licensing. Licensing's perfectly fine.
So if everyone who creates a thing has the license for their widget, and we just deal in licenses, and those licenses can be more or less restrictive, depending on whether you want to completely transfer over the benefit or
right.
Partially.
So then we need a license to be written, which may stifle growth in some way, because it wouldn't be completely open source. Still, that's a very good point. Yeah, okay. Because, and then, okay.
Sorry.
And so then comes the question of how do we get crypto in the mix? Like, we could do the trading only using crypto and make sure that the funds from Stripe never mix with the crypto funds, so that you can't in any way exchange fiat funds for crypto funds. And then sort of my very long-winded question to you is, because the platform starts to occupy an increasingly important position, are you okay?
Yeah. Could you give me 2 minutes? I'm going to get a glass of water.
Okay.
I've got a thing in my throat. Be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Hello.
You ever have that thing where you try not to cough?
Yeah. Dude,
Really difficult.
I've been coughing up bits of lung for like a week. I know all about that feeling.
So where were we?
Crypto.
Crypto. I don't know. I've not checked. Stripe doesn't do crypto, does it?
Yeah, they do actually. They do.
They do.
They can let people. So when it comes time for the sellers to cash out, they can allow you to cash out in USDC.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes time for the buyers to consume, they can, in some cases, if you're in their beta program, allow crypto to be used to pay in. But my real question is that, again, that's all Stripe controlled, which is great for compliance and all that. But I want Stripe uncontrolled, as in, if Platform was actually just an entity and the Dreamcatcher platform was able to support multiple such corporate entities, and we had a way to ensure that funds never mixed, so like Stripe funds could never be traded for crypto funds, then how would we present the business model to Stripe, given that the primary website, if Dreamcatcher.ai supported at launch this gateway entity and a pure crypto rail that connected to the Ethereum chain, and Stripe is busy reviewing our business, Stripe's going to come in and see the Dreamcatcher with this crypto connection in it and be like, what the hell? How do we show, or is it even legitimate to be that close to crypto? Like, how can we show that we are a participant in a network and we guarantee that the Stripe money never mixes with the crypto money? Is it too close, and we should just avoid that for now? Or
It sounds tricky.
it sounds real
Um,
tricky, eh?
I mean, that could give us a half-arsed answer, like, the platform has um, specialized sellers who are actually gateways into different ways of, trading
Another
Bitcoin.
way that we could do it is to present the entity's main website as a storefront, and
Mm.
so it's like Delaware.Dreamcatcher, and
Mm.
that only allows you to use the Stripe currency. But under the hood, if you went to Dreamcatcher.ai, you could merge together Delaware plus Hong Kong plus UK gateways, and you could have currency from all of them.
I don't know. That sounds like a fight we probably don't want to do early on.
Okay,
I
so
can easily
the
see how to launder a whole bunch of stolen crypto by throwing up stocks, for example. Um,
yeah, but if the money flows never mix, like if you can never, if one particular stuck can get funded by crypto and by Stripe money, but they can never mix. What's wrong with
yeah,
that?
but the again, this is just off the top of my head, but that's fine for funding. So say
Yeah,
half is funded by crypto, half is by fiat,
yeah.
but it's only ever paid for from the customer side in fiat.
It could be paid in crypto.
It could be, but if it's,
Oh,
let's just
I
say,
think I know
if
what
it's
you mean.
only,
Yeah, yeah. So you're saying that in the consumption mode, the buyer is only paying in fiat,
yeah,
but the some of the contributors had paid in crypto,
yeah,
and so
yeah,
that means that now we are paying fiat to this crypto guy, right?
yeah, and
Yeah. Okay.
we
Well,
should
that
be,
I reckon that is technically okay. I overall agree with you that there's a problem in that model and that it's quite unlikely that Stripe would ever be okay with it. So let's just come back to that one. But to answer your specific scenario, and I knew you would come up with scenarios because that's how these conversations always
yeah,
go. No, it's just it's the only way to talk about this problem, I think,
yeah,
which makes it good for testing. And so all that would happen there is fiat comes into platform, goes out to crypto guy. In order for crypto guy to receive the money, he has to go through the Stripe KYC process, um, and basically prove his government identity to Stripe so that they will make the payout
and he'll be paid out in fiat.
in fiat on the Stripe network.
Okay. Okay, well, turn it on its head. See now the buyer is only paying in crypto.
The buyer's only paying in crypto, which means that it's paying to contributor one did all their work inside the Stripe network. So they
Mm-hmm.
either put in client funds to get work done as fiat, or they were a worker and got paid out in fiat. And now some crypto has arrived. In order for the contributor to draw that down, they have to open a crypto account and they have to pull down the money in crypto. There's no.
So, I mean, the obvious way of doing that then is each contributor has their Stripe account and has a wallet address.
Well, yeah, like, but you always need the payment rail that the assets are being transferred to you in. Like, if you got paid using the Stripe assets, it'd be the same as looking at Stripe as just another blockchain. Like, if you've got the Ethereum chain and you've got the Binance chain or the Bitcoin blockchain, and someone pays you in Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain, your ability to cash that out into Ethereum is sort of limited.
Mm-hmm.
And at any rate, if we only paid you into your Bitcoin wallet it is now your problem to exchange the funds back to Ethereum if that's what you wanted. And so in that model, Stripe just looks like another blockchain where the assets only move within the Stripe blockchain. And if you want to interact with it, you got to sign up and get a Stripe account.
So, in that scenario, then they will be asking the contributor to go through KYC on Stripe to get cash.
If they want the
You-
cash out.
Yeah, yeah. Or if they want to use cash, but that's Stripe. So if it's Stripe, as you say, it's just another channel.
Mm-hmm.
So now if you had more than one coin, we'd be asking the contributor to say put in your address. We're not dealing with wallets. We're just sending it to this address.
Correct.
In which case, I'm not sure what Stripe could say about that. I don't know.
Yeah, they could say, well, it's awful close to crypto, fellas, and they might not want to deal with us, which would be legit. And in that case, maybe it's better that we just treat the crypto as completely separate for now and only deal in fiat just to be up and running, because up and running and trading in fiat only is better than being hampered,
I think that's the way to go. Have to think more, or actually read what the T's and C's are for Stripe. Seems like there probably is a way around it, but without knowing more details about exactly what they don't like.
I read all of their terms, and I read the whole lot of documentation today.
Oh, that must be nice.
It was, I gotta say, it was better than usual. I actually think they're a good company. Like, it felt like they had unified everything. It always felt like it was the same author.
Yeah, but if a payment on the platform in crypto from a buyer, if it never surfaces in Stripe, it never goes into Stripe land.
Yeah.
And all we're saying is we're not doing any exchanges. We're not doing anything of that. We're not holding. Contributor one, if you want to be paid in this crypto, then great. Give us where to send it, and then it's your problem. That will never touch Stripe.
Yep.
And maybe it's kind of association, isn't it?
That's the issue. It's crypto adjacent. It's crypto adjacent. That's the issue.
And also, if a buyer pays in some weird coin, and
yeah,
the contributor doesn't have a wallet, do we hold it?
Well, yeah,
right.
We have to. Like, what else are you gonna?
No, there's nothing else to do. But then we're holding crypto.
Yeah. So here's a curly situation for you to pass opinion on. If, let's say, contributor one is purely crypto, okay, so they hold a portion of this.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Do you? Okay, what is it?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Well, why don't you say it so that I don't have to waste my breath?
We've got contributor one, that's purely crypto. Contributor two is purely fiat. You've got a buyer who is only fiat. Then how do we pay contributor one?
No, we just went over that scenario. Contributor one needs to sign up to a Stripe account to be able to receive the payout. It's really just saying that Stripe is a blockchain, and you need an account on that blockchain to withdraw.
To give a more tricky one, I guess, is what I'm going to say. Buyer one pays in ETH.
Yeah, buyer pays in ETH.
One only has a Doge.
A Stripe, a Stripe account or a Bitcoin account.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and so the platform ETH wallet is now holding. It knows that it owes contributor one ETH, but contributor one has not claimed ETH.
Right.
Right.
So, Stripe. Does Stripe care about whether
we hold crypto?
Well, we're holding fiat. Does it care if we're also holding crypto if it never goes through the platform?
That's what I'm like. They shouldn't. I mean, it's like, I can understand that they'd get nervous that it's adjacent, but I'm still like, man, we're not mixing those things.
Yeah.
So what we really need is a way to make that mix or that distinction very clear, and so that it's not actually it's Dreamcatcher, the platform, is not the same as the Stripe version, because the Stripe is, we're just trying to make a gateway, and we need to show to Stripe that that's our business.
Would they get pity, for example, if buyer is in fiat, contributor one only wants Bitcoin,
Mm.
uh, and we say, well, we're going to exchange at that day's rate into Bitcoin for you. We're going to buy Bitcoin and then send it to you. They're going to get weird about that.
Maybe, but if the platform acted as the business, then that's just how we chose to pay our staff or our suppliers. Because if the buyer purchased from the platform, and we simply said, well, now we owe these guys XYZ because they hold title or license to that thing, then, so I like the license model because that's pretty good.
I guess there are a few things. There's
But this was not the scenario that I was going to drop on you. The curly one is that buyer pays in fiat.
Yep.
Contributor one doesn't withdraw fiat, and contributor one never passed KYC checks on Stripe. Contributor one then sells using crypto or some third market or something or other, sells its license split to contributor three, and then contributor three would have the right to pull down any unclaimed funds, I would imagine. And so in effect, contributor one sold the license for the value of the fiat that was drawable from holding it to contributor three. And now, did we just help someone trade crypto?
Well, you could get around that by saying license is only forward looking.
But then, no, well, because then we're stuck holding the money. We got to pass that on.
That's a different thing. That's for contributor one to come and claim it. It's like, it's your money. We'll just...
No, it's got to... well, I feel strongly that it needs to transfer with the sale. Like, if you sold it, then unclaimed funds go with it.
That sounds like it's exploitable, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds like there's a bug in there somewhere, right?
Yeah. Oh, if I were to try and exploit that, so I create a platform
Is it...
account and I generate $1 million worth of value.
Yeah.
But never draw it out and never gone through KYC.
Yeah, never paid tax on it. Never.
So the KYC remains with platform and Stripe.
Yeah, because after that point, I guess it would have been platform's money, technically.
Yeah. And then sells the rights for a widget to contributor three.
Yeah.
Now, that $1 million is owed or drawable down by contributor three, but contributor three, in order to get access to it, would have to pass KYC.
Yes, but contributor three would have paid $1 million worth of crypto to contributor one.
That sounds a lot like trading. Because you could steal $1 billion worth of crypto. Contributor three could. And then
buy it, spend the crypto.
Yeah. And because it's kind of under it's not off the books, but it's like a wallet to wallet.
Right.
Never knows about it.
Right. But then does that really matter though? when it's
Right.
contributor 3 has to pass KYC?
Um, what would be an analogy?
I think
To
that's
make a
the curly thing, right? So we might have to start
hmm.
with disabled trading or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I don't think I'm competent to really say whether that is an okay thing or not.
it's very frustrating because that's a core part of our what we want to offer people is that we
Yeah.
want to pay them for what they did, but we also want to make that uh, tradable.
So let's see if there's a real world analogy to take out the dream catcher thing. So if I were to set up a company um, and get lots of money in, and then sell the company just for crypto from a guy who's just stolen $1 billion worth of crypto,
Hmm.
would anyone balk at that?
Well, now you're holding stolen crypto, so you got some issues. But
Right. So you could trace the crypto back, yeah, but
and then the guy that sold the stolen crypto last would have had to pay KYC to get it out.
yeah, yeah.
So
It kind of feels like it all kind of cascades down to the last guy who wants to go to fiat.
yeah,
He's the KYC guy.
yeah, which is fucking it's hairy though. Or another scenario could be that if this was like rental properties
Mm-hmm.
and the platform is Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
and then the platform, so contributor one owns the property,
Mm-hmm.
and the buyer is renting the Airbnb and it's accruing for contributor one, but they never drew it down. Then contributor one sells the property to contributor two, and now contributor two can draw down the rental that was accrued but not claimed by contributor one. That sounds legit.
Does. And another way of saying it would be, say, in digital assets world, contributor one creates a website with recurring revenue. Um, the thing is, it's the previously accrued funds that are already in hand. Now, recurring revenue is a different thing, isn't it? Because that's forward-looking in license. So if you were to buy a website,
Mm.
it's like you're not going to go after what you've got in the account unless you're buying it as, you know, effectively a business. Now, does that sound dodgy? Could you use that?
Use that for laundering. Maybe not actually. So I mean, why don't we? I like what you say about licensing. If instead of calling it an NFT, because the issue is that in this Stripe list of forbidden businesses, prohibited and restricted businesses, you will find that the term NFT is reasonably rampant.
Hmm.
So we got secondary NFT sales. So that's what if we called our thing an NFT, that's what we'd be doing. There is some support for selling, like first party NFTs. Like we are trying to do first party NFTs in a way.
Well, the weird thing about it, I wonder if there's anything further down, but with NFTs, that is a license sale. It's not. There's nothing else other than the license sale when you're buying. Or
Well,
second level NFTs.
NFTs are not necessarily a license.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna guess that part of the problem with NFTs is that they can be stolen like crypto, and you can have very little comeback from it.
No, I don't think they can be stolen like crypto.
Yeah, what? An NFT? Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
a form of cryptocurrency. You steal the wallet, you stole the NFT.
Well, NFTs are defined by the right to use that. You have a sole worldwide right forever
Are you
of
talking
an
about
NFT.
NFTs in general, or the ones that we've been talking about making?
Well, let's just say an image, right? And you
Yeah,
get that
there's
image.
absolutely no rights necessarily come with an NFT. Some NFTs can attempt to convey a wide range of rights, but just because it's an NFT gives you nothing.
Yeah, which is why the NFT just sits there because anyone can like copy it and that sort of thing. The thing that when someone buys an NFT, they're actually buying the rights to that NFT, and so they can come against anyone else who uses it if the license was worded that way. But the license can be worded in any way. But the
This
transfer is actually license.
the way that yeah. So if we need to get away from thinking about it as an NFT, even if we're using NFTs as the accounting mechanism or the ownership tracking mechanism, the value that was traded has to be the license, the percentage license rights to the
Right. Yeah,
right.
exactly. And say if instead of talking about NFTs, because I think that gets into murky waters. Cause,
That'll get us
yeah,
sunk real fast.
yeah. So say if there was a license sold that referred back to a hash on a commit, and anything through an ambient attribution that's owed to that hash just goes to the license holder,
Right.
depending
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the license is.
So we can actually like I hope we don't have to make our own license, but what I do know is that we could license under say the GPL, and you can license it under the GPL, but you can make the license owners be all of the contributors. And so the license owners have the right to trade whether they are the owner of the license. That's the
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing about the GPL is that you can,
Oh, tradable licenses. Oh, that's a great point.
yeah, so you're trading the license, the fact
Mm.
that you own a piece of the license on it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that entitles you to receive payments for the usage of that software in our platform. There's another angle we can lean on, which is the fact that because it's all GPL'd, no one has to pay, but we choose to pay. And
Mm-hmm.
so the platform is sort of, it's not, there's no guarantee or there's no force, there's no obligation to pay everyone. It's just that's what we stake our reputation on is the fact that we do make these payouts. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's not, you're not owed it because of some legally enforceable right.
Yeah, you're right. I'd just be a repetition and a kind of presentation piece.
Yeah, it's almost like affiliate sales.
Yeah, yeah. And the number of affiliate sales saying we don't pay you out until you've earned $20. And it's like $1 per referral. Or you
Or
get
something like
15.
that,
It's
right?
like they
Yeah.
just trouser it. Yeah, at some point. Hmm. Interesting.
So anyway, this is what I've been up to, and
I think number one, I agree. I think we should move away from talking about NFTs because I don't think that adds.
it's too murky.
Yeah.
It's we're as much an NFT as a Git commit is an NFT, and no one
Yeah.
really bothers to talk about Git commits as NFTs. But
Well, yeah, we're closer to like I don't know, someone builds a piece of software then sells a license
mm,
for
and
someone
we
else
we
to
do
sell.
want to be able to enable a secondary market where people can trade these things independently, but they're not on an established blockchain. They're on our own blockchain. So it's not, I don't know if that, and we're in complete control of the infrastructure at the moment. So,
Oh, right. You know that's right.
yeah. So
Yeah, and even saying we're a blockchain, we're doing
that's stretching it too,
we're
because
offering
we don't have
blockchain
consensus.
properties.
We have
Yeah.
some blockchain properties. Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. But yeah, the top level, yes, I think using NFT is just going to make our life harder.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Yeah, and
think
in
that
fact, the properties of it are very similar to anyone with. I don't know. It's like I can't remember. Some dude sold his complete back catalogue of music to like Sony Music,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
he still owns the music. He just sold the license,
yeah, yeah.
and it's like, can Sony then give a license to someone else? Well, yeah, sure. I'm sure
Mm,
Spotify has a license with Sony to use this guy's music, so it
mm.
seems a well-trodden path.
Okay. So I think the way to go then is we'll try and see how far we get with these pitching these business models to Stripe, and then we'll get
Mm-hmm.
their feedback and then adapt to it. But what it helped me see is that these are the fundamentals of the
Mm.
Dreamcatcher business model, and it comes down to these two AI systems where one of them is at least a compound system. Um, Other interesting things that this threw out is that it's at the point where this whole group become contributors,
Mm-hmm.
we are attempting to flatten the money, which could have come in as multiple different assets at multiple different times, and we're trying to compare that to the work so that you get like um, basically a single number back.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's various ways we can do that. I'm a little bit queasy about appearing like an exchange if crypto comes in, but I don't think we need to deal with that. We'll
Right.
just
So we,
pass it through
I
the
think
market.
we look. It might be best just to launch with no crypto associated whatsoever.
Oh,
And
well, for sure. Because we could be months trying to figure this out and hire lawyers and all that kind of stuff.
right,
So this is a stuck. It's like, how do we get crypto in this?
right. How important is it that we be able to show that this is just a gateway company and that the Dreamcatcher platform is separate from it?
Um, what do you mean by the Dreamcatcher platform is separate from it? So the
The
gateway company would
The
be.
Dreamcatcher is supposed to be a network of people running the Dreamcatcher software, communicating over the internet or whichever
Yep.
network they can,
Mm-hmm.
and the gateway is compatible with it and
And the first
adds
of
the
potentially.
first of
Yeah.
many, and it adds the ability to trade goods and services for fiat in between people who have registered with Stripe. So it effectively mints currency into the network and allows it to be moved around the place.
On
Where,
first blush, it seems a good idea to keep the two at arm's length, and so Stripe has the relationship with um, our gateway,
gateway, yeah,
does not have a relationship with the, any
the
of
network.
the network or anything else that happens
Yeah,
subsequently.
but the network has no relation with anyone. That's the thing. The network's not an entity.
Yeah, exactly. So who would you sign with? Whereas the gateway, I think we talked about this a couple of years ago, didn't we? The gateway is the thing. That's the real grounding of in real world. If anyone wanted to create their own gateway, crack
Yeah.
on. That's great. They can also have a different ambient attribution model if they wanted. You know,
Or they
1,000
could have the
flowers.
same, though. That was the main thing. They should
Yeah,
be able to have the same ambient attribution model as each other, and they should be compatible with each other. They might even, under some conditions, be able to allow transfer of funds between each other. Like,
yeah, but that would be a kind of one-to-one kind of right. Your attribution model is compatible with ours, and therefore we open up a tunnel between the two. It's like, yeah, let's crack on. Another
Well,
one,
no. I
create
I
create a
was
different
thinking
one.
that the attribution model is always the same between the two because the gateways never specify what the attribution model is. The attribution model is what defines the
Oh, I see what
Dreamcatcher
you're saying.
platform.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yes, you're right. To be more specific, time up the language. There can be more than one attribution model
Mm,
in the network.
yes.
Um, and it's like, well, okay, so gateways, in order to be compatible with saying, well, you're using the same attribution model as us? Then it's like, yeah, okay, so that's an easy one. Let's tunnel between. And maybe another gateway uses two attribution models, and the users can choose. In which case, that'd be another matter. But
I guess,
it's not. Sorry, again?
I guess it comes down to how we want to present to the users. Like, if we present to the users with, hey, you can use Ethereum. Okay, tell me, how do I get Ethereum into the system? Okay, well, you go off to Binance and you open an account and you buy some stuff there and then you pop it in there and blah, 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 you're done, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that thing. And then you're like, okay, what if I want fiat? And then the Stripe wallet pops up and we're like, here's Stripe. This is how you use it. Like, would Stripe see us, so long as we could guarantee no mingling of funds?
Oh, well, maybe that's the way to not mingle them.
Well, that's how it has to be, because it'd
Well,
be like being able to present a Bitcoin wallet and an Ethereum wallet together. It's like, well, they can't mingle because those
well,
technologies are.
it's, I think I understand what you're saying, but okay, so if day one we had a gateway that was the fiat gateway, dealt with the network, everyone's happy. And then day two we created the Bitcoin gateway, deals with
Yeah.
the network, everyone's happy. Everyone's doing Bitcoin in that gateway. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
else you can do
Mm-hmm.
now. I don't think it would break any T's and C's to add a skim on that, just to like mash the two together in a UI, because you're not actually bringing
Yeah,
those
but
two together.
the UI is technically provided by the platform, by the network. And so you can have
Um,
any UI you want, and it could still be network compatible.
yeah, but the network is not part. The network is not a thing, as you're saying. The network doesn't have a relationship with Stripe that Stripe can get RC with, as long as the
Right.
gateway
But now, does
that
that
Stripe's
mean that
talking with.
for our application to Stripe, do we have to be able to describe our relationship to the network?
I think they'd want to know that, but if
Right.
we
Because
say
we
that
either
we
present ourselves as the network, which seems like we could probably get it across the line, or we got to go down the path of describing how we are not the network, we serve the network, and we manage money.
um, unfortunately, the second one sounds the better one to me
You
in
reckon?
terms
Okay.
of
Well, that's
yeah.
cool. That's
So
good.
the network is off doing its own thing. Okay,
Yeah.
so right, owned, operated by companies that happen to have the same people involved. That doesn't matter. The legal entity that Stripe is asking about is the gateway, and the gateway is saying, right, Stripe, we want to take in fiat, and there's this network here which we don't have any. As a gateway, we have no legal control over this. We
Yep,
don't have
it's
any
GPL,
interest
open
in it.
source software. It's people running the software can participate on the network
Well,
securely.
yeah.
It has identity primitives built into it. We, as the gateway, want to use those identity primitives to make sure that we are talking to the same person that signed up for the Stripe account,
Yep.
and we want
Yep.
to allow them to buy licenses to software that gets constructed on the network, because it is a builder's network and a consumer's network. And we want to allow people to pay for consumption on the network, where we will then pay out the purchasing amounts to the pro rata holders of the licenses of the software that got consumed
Yeah.
instantaneously. Yeah?
Yeah. But the whole thing is in a bubble, that is only the Stripe bubble, this gateway.
Yeah,
Legal
and so
entity.
we make sure that we strictly never mingle funds, and that we leverage the AI attribution primitives, or the quality assurance primitives of the network, to make sure that genuine value was exchanged. So we can show how the Dreamcatcher network can detect irrelevant value. It's like, well, that, that stuck is
Mm-hmm.
not solved. Like, or, the
Yeah.
market value of that stuck is just nowhere near. Like, that's wildly off. So we need to be able to convince them that no one's doing fictitious work, which equates to money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to convince.
But that would be it's almost an oversight thing. So if I were to build
We're
a website,
responsible for that with them. Like, we
yeah,
need to prove to them that we are doing that and can do it.
yeah, but we don't have, or the gateway does not have control over the network. Different legal entity. Um, if I
Does
were
it
to
need to
build
be
a
a legal
website,
entity?
I think so, in order to have the Stripe contract.
No, does the network need to be a legal
Oh,
entity?
no, it doesn't.
No, right?
It's
It's
just going to
just
be a
compatible.
complete,
It's just
it
protocols,
could
right?
be anarchy. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, but say if I were to build a website that skimmed Gumtree, eBay, any of these resellers, Etsy, whatever, and then presented one interface, and you could put money in and buy things, and then it's like, well, we'll deal with the back end, if you're buying this from eBay. Now, if that eBay item happened to be stolen goods, um, there is a legal responsibility and a moral responsibility of the website to say, well, actually,
Right.
we need to do something about that. But if there are safeguards in place, like
Yeah.
if it's brought to our attention that this is illegal and so
Right.
on, but
So
we're not responsible for this other network.
so the gateway has to be aware of copyright infringement,
Yeah,
right?
or take
Like,
reasonable steps to
yeah,
detect it and
detect it
stop it.
and stamp it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
this is starting to sound feasible. So we turn up to Stripe. We're like, hey, there's this network called the Dreamcatcher. It's got some AI tooling for quality control, and it's got some identity management features, and we want to be able to allow people to pay using a credit card to pay for usage on that network, and we want to be able to pay out the purchasing fiat to the people that built or contributed to those things, and we want to pay them out using Stripe's payment systems where these people have to have passed KYC.
Yep.
Sometimes
Yep.
people will come in as clients and they will pay money to this gateway in order to produce software. There is a quality assurance mechanism there, and then the consumables that are produced are then available to be purchased by buyers using fiat, right?
Yeah, but I'd even simplify that in that the whole construction of a widget, consumption of a widget, that's all network stuff. What the gateway does is put a nice scrim on it so that you can use fiat in order to interact with this network. There is a connection between the gateway and the network to say this license is now bought. We're trusting the network to deal with the licenses and so on. We've done due diligence. We think it's going to do well. And we're just basically accounting for who.
Okay, so in that model, you're suggesting then that the consumption mode of the gateway be a separate legal entity to the construction mode of the gateway, which is again totally separate to the trading mode where people trade contributions.
Yeah, and also we've got a fiat gateway. So if you want to add crypto, then you get Bitcoin gateway, and deals with its own problems.
All right, so
And
if
then
we, so really the angle is we got to distance ourselves from the network and be like, that is a set of compatible protocols. We have audited them and believe that they are secure.
Yep, and that audit is going to be the king of this whole thing, because that's effectively what we're saying is Dreamcatcher Network is a key part of our supply chain.
Right.
We're not legally responsible for it, but it's a key
But
part.
we
and
lean
so
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've audited to this. We're content. Here's why.
All right. So you think then that the consumer entity takes in consumption payments, looks up the record on this network that it doesn't control but it trusts and can audit, and then disperses or holds for the identities that are registered as the license holders of the software on the Dreamcatcher network. And then when those people want to claim their funds, they sign up through Stripe's onboarding process to prove who they are, and then the funds are dispersed out to them, right? This means that the attribution, the ownership record and the attribution amounts is outside of the control of the consumption gateway. Yep.
Exactly so.
So what if the attribution algorithm suddenly says send it all to Kim Jong-il?
Well, then you're talking about this is a key supplier to the
Oh,
gateway.
right. So the gateway needs to prove that it
so-
has some safeguards in place to detect a fault
Right, and
in the
that
supplier.
comes down to what's the governance around this network thing that you're
Right.
relying solely on. It's like, well, the governance is
Right. So it really needs to be like
community-driven,
we
key people, that sort of thing.
we trace the operation of it, and we have software systems in place that detect anomalies and that halt, detect suspicious activity and halt any payouts when we see something going awry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then what you're saying is that there's a separate entity that is in charge of the construction side of things, but it's construction in fiat.
Would it need to be separate, or would it be just fiat, so you can build and buy? The definition of the gateway is fiat. And you're building, and by building, all you're doing is recognizing what you're doing in the network. And it's like, this identity here in this gateway is provably this identity in the network.
Okay, so you want to make the gateway serves two purposes. It operates in build mode and consume mode. It looks to the network to figure out the attribution when it's in terms of consume mode, like it has no control over that. When it's in build mode, it holds liability for the work to be done, and it uses the network tools for QA to say when something's been done. It ultimately holds the responsibility of being correct, so it monitors those tools for their correctness, but in the end, its only purpose is to take in the funds for the construction. If the software construction is completed and it wasn't using any infringing license, any copyrighted material, then it will allow those funds to be pulled down by the contributors that have gone through the KYC process for Stripe.
Yeah.
right? And then the amount that they own of that license is entirely dependent on the network, not the gateway doesn't set that. The gate.
Yes, the license piece is networked, but again, that license is uniquely identified and can be inside of the gateway being used, saying we trust the network. We know this license is the
Well, we
same as
verify the
your
network.
claim.
We verify the
We've
network.
verified it, yep. And then stuff comes in, and then we're happy not to ask the network to pay you out because money comes in. That's the whole point of the gateway. Money comes in, boom, you get some cash. It never goes to the network because it's inside the gateway. The rest of the network doesn't know.
Well, the rest of the network does know because it's recorded on the network, but the payment is handled by the
network
gateway.
doesn't have a decision about it. There's no, so the decision on whether to pay is the gateway's.
Well,
is referring to the network.
Right, yeah, the gateway use the network as the reference, but the responsibility and decision to pay out is ultimately with the gateway. And so now the gateway incurs some operating costs because it has to have these extra processes.
The gateway is now basically a reseller of the services that the network
Right.
Right,
and so
presents to the world, but it packages up in a nice way that you can have Stripe.
Okay, so the gateway then gets paid in the same way as every other contributor because of when you consume the software, you in part consumed the service of hosting, but you also consumed the service of the gateway to process the funds and make the decision to pay or not pay.
Right. Now, next step is obvious, isn't it? It's like, well, okay, so how about a third party who wants to sell a service that is actually provided on the Concussion network? I would say what they do is they contract with a gateway saying, right, well, can we get access to this service and we'll pass through because you guys are Stripe, or can we get this service through you because you guys are Bitcoin and we gather Bitcoin. So
what's an example of the service?
Say
like a plumber that comes to your house or something different?
Well, let's keep with digital, just make it simple. But yeah, so say if I don't, yeah, you're gonna paint me a picture. So
we're gonna make you some digital art. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so that's available in the App Store. I'm interacting with the gateway, which is passing through and creating jitters and so on. It's like, well, okay, how do I interact with the gateway if I actually want to just API into it from my service? I want all this good stuff that you guys are doing. Then you've got a legal entity you can contract with a third party saying, okay, right, I have a Stripe account, you have a Stripe account, let's go make lots of money. So we'll pass that through and then call down, and then it's the gateways. I'm so sorry. What's VR etiquette when you get kicked out for no readily apparent reason without even an error message?
I think the etiquette is you plow straight in to minimize the loss of time.
Got it. So, if you can, I think you had a diagram on the upstream part. I think I saw that, or I might have imagined it, thinking you should have a diagram. So, in consumption,
yeah,
buyer
Yeah.
If there's a third-party buyer to the left, right? Well, actually, no.
You mean
Third-party
like here?
buyer. Yes, yes. So, um, say if someone throws up a storefront, lots of customers, so on,
Mm.
they're adding some value. Maybe it's an Urdu or something. That storefront would then go through a gateway, and the legal contract would be between the storefront, which in this scenario is third party. It would be a contract between that storefront website and the gateway because it likes Stripe, and it would be given permission somehow to actually use the services that are being stored, being bought, and so on. I'm not raising that as a question because it kind of just falls out of the structure we were just talking about as a freebie.
All right. So let me ask this whole question a different way. Okay, you and I are trying to, in our minds, go through all the various scenarios we want to enable on the Dreamcatcher, but maybe it doesn't matter to hit them all. Do we agree that these two modes, consumption and construction, need to be present for it to be considered the Dreamcatcher?
Yes, the only thing would be what does platform mean, assuming we talk about gateway and network?
That would be, okay, I'll edit that for you.
Oh, by the way, this deserves a lot more scrutiny. This is just like
What?
Following the chain of thought seems to be reasonable, I think.
What do you mean deserves a lot more scrutiny?
Legally, in terms of whether.
I think all it matters, I think all it needs is actually to have Stripe be okay with it.
Well, yeah, it's
right?
The same thing, really. Yeah. I don't know. Stripe seems like a bunch of groovy dudes, so maybe it'd be okay as coming back with 2 or 3 versions saying.
Well, they say they are. They say they are. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But they say that they are.
Okay.
They say that they explicitly want to. They will work with you for novel business models. They encourage novel business models, but they just want you to understand that they have obligations.
Yeah, of course. They're grounded to earth. They can't move on certain things.
Yeah, but their business model seems to be, like I mean, they've got customers like Lyft, OpenAI, GitHub.
Yeah.
Like they've got customers that had novel business models.
The contract is an interesting one, isn't it?
Right. So, okay. So, what if I put it like this, where I say, the gateway, we are the gateway, and we use the software and the network to calculate our outputs, but we are the money processor.
Yeah, it kind of needs network on there somewhere, and it's almost like network is at the same level as gateway, but with I was going backwards and forwards.
I don't think it's almost like
the network, is it?
No, it's not. It's like the web app of the gateway is the network, which is a totally separate thing.
Yeah. But the workers and the clients in this construction mode, they're all working through the gateway, and the gateway on their behalf is doing all the API calls saying you did this, you did that.
Yeah, so they're doing the network is how they communicate with each other, but the gateway only gets involved when it comes time to money.
That's actually different from thinking, possibly better. I was thinking everything went through the gateway because that's your single surface.
No, it's only money.
You can do. Well, let's put it this way. Could you do? Yes, you can. You can do work on the network without having a gateway account at all.
Correct.
Right.
correct. And you could be a client on the network with no Stripe gateway account.
Right, because maybe you don't care about cash and you just want to do stuff, but it's still
Yeah,
being,
it's because the
all recorded
licenses
and
the
collected.
licenses are like the licenses sit on the network. I think is the thing that's happening there.
I think so. Yeah, yes, it'd have to be because you could have, say, Fiat and Bitcoin gateway. You couldn't put a license into either one of those because both might have some claim on it from a worker or a client that is only on one or the other. So licenses have to be in the network.
So my question then is, we can't launch with just one of these. We need both of them because you got to make the software as well as consume the software.
Yeah, that's fair.
It sounds
My
like,
argument is you could smish those two together into
yeah, hang
one
on,
of
mate,
them,
I'm
but
getting
there's
it.
there's different modes. There's
Yeah,
different modes of working. Yeah.
so you're saying that the construction and consumption can be the same legal entity. And so what I put to you is that perhaps we should start the process of just registering the gateway, um, with Stripe, and
Yeah.
then
Why not?
tell them that this is our business model and this is how we want to do it, um, and see what they say.
Yeah. Still think. I know we've not put it up yet, but if we're saying that the gateway only gets involved in money when there's some kind of transaction on a network, the network needs to be in the diagram somewhere. It might be a bit convoluted to put it in, but it's like, well, where's this network? At the moment, it looks like client one goes to the gateway to pay
No, I
workers.
don't think so. Because you could replace the word network with WhatsApp, and then like, do you need to tell Stripe about how you guys use WhatsApp to communicate?
Oh, okay, yeah,
Right?
yeah, that's a good point, well made. Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
The and then we just leave off all the advanced features like trading contributions.
well, we just put that into another area because, um,
We could just try our luck. And
where's identity sit? The network identity.
the network identity is
Different from gateway, isn't it?
it's connected, it's mapped. So we're using the network identity, but ultimately when it comes time to payment time, Stripe manages the identity because Stripe handles the KYC grade identity that meets their legal requirements.
Okay.
And
Well, I
so
might be getting. I'm definitely getting too far into the weeds here, but I would think that there'd be a network identity so that
there
you could.
is there is and but that's like saying that we store every contributor's email address. But then when they go and sign up with Stripe, they might use a completely different email address that we never see, maybe.
Sorry, no. Okay, so here's the thing I'm thinking about. Say if you generate a widget and you sell a license, half a 50% license. Why not to the Fiat gateway?
Mm-hmm.
And you go, yeah, okay. Well, what I want to do now is sign up to the Bitcoin gateway. Now, the Bitcoin gateway would need to verify that you are the license holder for you to sell the other 50% in
Yep.
Bitcoin.
Yep.
So there's kind of one identity on the network, but you could have more than one.
The mapped. Like in order to receive a payment, we use the network identity, and then we'll only allow the payment if that network identity tells us what the valid Stripe identity they want to withdraw using is.
Yes, but what's the question to the network? So, say on the Fiat gateway,
Mm-hmm.
we've done KYC, we've done all that, and a guy says, right, I want to sell the license to this other guy on the same gateway for fiat.
Right.
Now, that license is not in the gateway. That license is in the network.
Yeah.
So you need a kind of one-to-one mapping. This person in this gateway is this person. Or it's like a many-to-one, actually, because you have more than one gateway. And then
The network identity is ultimate, and then each network identity has multiple gateway identities
Yeah.
that it has connected to itself.
Yeah, that works.
And then to do a trade, the network identity owner says, I'll swap as soon as this gateway identity, the Stripe gateway identity, says that you have paid, I will transfer the ownership of this thing to you.
And that transfer of ownership is actually recorded in the network, not in the gateway.
Yeah, recorded the ownership ledger.
Yeah.
The ownership ledger is maintained in the network. The gateway keeps track of that ledger to make sure that it's legitimate and is being modified according to the rules.
Yeah.
And then each identity in the network can optionally map to an identity through the Stripe gateway with Stripe, which allows it to interact monetarily.
Oh yeah, like OAuth through saying, right, the network's happy with this gateway because, you're using Stripe or whatever you're using. So we just pass that through. But we can map it.
It's always a mapping. So the network identity is the top level, and the network identities are what stores the ownership of the license share. And then each identity can choose to connect themselves to a gateway Stripe identity and then indicate that that's how they want to send money or pay money.
Yeah. So it holds up in that one.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna ask for a little bit of patience here. I'm gonna make one more diagram.
Another diagram. I do like diagrams. I'm a big diagram fan.
Me too, buddy. I love diagrams.
I'm currently wearing a t-shirt with yay diagrams on it.
I think when I die,
In a diagram form.
I would like a diagram on my gravestone. It will tell my life story in mermaid chart.
That'd be brilliant. Oh, that'd be so funny. Sorry, tickle me on that one. Trading relationships, yeah. Okay. Just heads up, I've got about 10 minutes, maybe 15 at push.
Okay. I think that's how you auction off. You auction off license shares.
License shares. Yeah.
Which would be the third mode of operation.
You could get a bit more detailed if there was
How?
like slices of auction. No, you could have slices of licensees.
That's license.
Slices. Yeah, it's easy to say. It's easy to
That's license. That's the fucking selling licenses. That's a fucking.
Why is that so funny? Come on, man.
Well, it's sort of like it's kind of like what we're doing, like
License.
a license. That's hilarious. That's a great name. Like, it's not an NFT, it's a license.
Yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Oh, that's not bad, is it? Like, it keeps us away from NFTs, the name, but essentially it's the same thing. And can be sliced in any dimension. Essentially, what we're saying when we're talking about our right to actually do ambient attribution. That is
It's license.
our legal right to do ambient attribution is the fact that you've done something on the platform,
Right.
and let's say the network. The network owns that license, and therefore has the right to distribute funds based on ambient attribution, and can slice it and move it.
Right.
Because otherwise, what's our right to actually, if someone does something on the network, they own the IP.
Yeah.
What's our right to that?
Oh, so you want to say that actually there's this other entity that holds all the full licenses.
Yeah,
So like
and then kind of
Dreamcatcher Holding Co. or something. And
Right,
then
right.
when it slices it up, it's like a sub-license
Yeah,
where it
combines slicenses together in jitters.
where it says that whenever some oh right, so then the software itself is AGPL'd, but the owner of the license, the AGPL license, is the Dreamcatcher, and will grant the contributors a license, which is an obligation that when money comes in for the use of this software,
Then
we'll pay them
disperse it
using this
versus
system.
these rules. Yeah, and also the fact that we're obligated to honor any trades of further slices of that license.
Yeah, and then it's like
So that
here's how
number-
here's how the trading happens, and here's the rules to protect yourself against like losing your keys, or here's the recovery mechanism and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. So, for example, we do a trucking app in New Zealand, and someone else wants to buy the rights to just use it in the UK, and it's like, yeah, okay, but I don't want worldwide license, just the UK. So, okay, so you've got geographical license on that. Okay, so we can, and also, I want to try it out, so I'm going to have the license for a year, and after that, yeah, we'll find out. But I'll buy that license for a year. So there's different ways to slice licenses.
So the
But
essence of the
NFTs,
platform then sounds like, let's ignore the fact that we don't have a custom license yet, but really the platform's purpose is to trade portions of
Right.
licenses
Yeah,
and to allow people to purchase or rent those licenses as, consuming
yeah,
in the consuming mode, but also generating those licenses in the build mode and trading those licenses in the trade mode.
yeah. Seems
So
that way, doesn't it?
building, consuming, trading.
Yeah. Because we can't go against IP rights.
The build step guarantees that there's no IP conflicts, because that's part of the quality assurance check, that it makes sure
So the
that the
person
work
doing that piece of IP, whatever it is,
is
that's
original.
yours. But you, by using the platform, you grant the platform the holder of the license to use that,
Right.
and you can slice it up. And also,
So that
you
means
take it
that
away
we need a legal entity that acts as the license holder of all the work that happens.
It seems that way, doesn't it?
Okay, should that be the gateway?
No, can't.
Why not?
Because,
Why can't it be?
you could anyone, any user could be on more than one gateway at the time. Fiat, Bitcoin. I'm on both gateways. I want to be paid out on Bitcoin.
Right. So the license holder needs to be independent. Okay, we don't really have an entity for that. We'll just make one up.
Yeah, I mean, all it does is just hold, the legal rights, and that's essentially the thing that allows.
Maybe that's a good place to put a DAO, like a legal DAO.
Yeah,
Maybe.
actually, that's a perfect place for it, because that's the place you don't want anyone fucking with, because that's
Right,
Fort
so
Knox.
you're
Right?
okay with having the gateway fucked with,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you're not okay.
With Fort Knox getting fucked with. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next question becomes, where do we put our equity, and what is the path to a public company? And I'll jump ahead of the gun here and say that I think we make an entity that acts as it acts as a contributor. So it's like, we'll call it Tom and Scott Co., for lack of a better word. It runs as a contributor here, which means that it owns the license of the things that it builds, and then it raises capital or reinvests its earnings as a client, but it can also act as a worker as well. So basically, it's an actor within the system.
That sounds right, doesn't it?
Yep.
Sounds right.
Yep.
And that legal entity, the Scott and Tom show, or is it Tom and Scott? Can't remember. Has some seat
The
on
SCOM.
the governance of the network, which will be necessary because as a contributor, the first thing we'll do is create a gateway so other people can use this thing as well.
Right. But so the SCOM is not the gateway. It's a separate entity, right?
Yeah, the SCOM creates the gateway and hosts.
Right. And then the SCOM doesn't have tax obligations unless, well, you and I don't have tax obligations unless we draw down income.
Yep.
The SCOM doesn't have tax obligations until it draws down from the platform, although depending on where it's registered, revenue might be recognized at the instant it's done, who knows. But ultimately, the SCOM would hold licenses that increase in value. It would sell off equity in itself to then convert to licenses by way of being a client. It would then ultimately list or be reversed into a public company so that its equity was more liquid and so that it could raise further capital to be a stronger client, as well as promoting the network, promoting the ecosystem, and which in turn adds value to the license holdings that it has.
Yeah, and one of the things that what do you call it? SCOM.
Scott and Tom.
Yeah, SCOM. One of the first things it would do is on the network create a gateway to allow us others through. Now, anything that gateway wants to charge and so on is down to the T's and C's between the users going through that gateway and choose not to. Someone else can do a gateway and so on.
Yeah.
But the funding of that goes through attribution back to SCOM, unless we, bring in the very large list of characters that have helped us get there. But that gateway is a license that allows other people to come through more easily than we have, because we've gone the long way around.
The gateway is a license. I don't understand that.
The gateway is a thing.
Yeah,
Someone owns that thing.
it should be.
If
It should be
SCOM
us.
created
Just to.
that,
Well, SCOM doesn't have to have created that.
or it could be, you know,
Probably you and I
yeah,
will make it because someone's got to do it, but
right.
it doesn't really matter, and it should be completely separate. Like the SCOM is a holding company that holds our license assets, and
Yes, I would just suggest one of those aspects could be the first gateway.
the gateway is not really an asset. It's supposed to run at nil profit because the gateway that induces the maximum ecosystem growth is the one that imposes the minimum friction. And so zero profit is
Yeah, but what's stopping anyone else create another gateway called Platinum Gateway, where you got to
right.
pay 400 quid a year
Nothing's
just
stopping
to
them.
like turn up?
Nothing's stopping it. Good on them.
Yeah, yeah. So there's going to have to be some kind of the gateway itself is a
Yeah.
thing. It's going to have to take cash. It's going to
It's
have
a
to
legal
right.
entity. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
got, yeah.
So who owns that?
You and me, I think. And
Outside of the network, we just
yeah,
or
it's just a legal entity. Well,
yeah,
why
we
does it
could
need
just
to
do
be
it,
owned?
yeah.
Like,
There's no
ideally, we want it to never be controlled by someone. Like,
yeah.
but it might be a DAO, it might not. But you know,
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. If it's inside
it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that so long as it performs well, that's all.
Yeah.
And we should open source all the process that we went through to set it up so that other people can make their own ones. And we're just like, well, we just made the easiest, cheapest, fastest, most useful thing up front. We sort of don't really want to be doing it. We'd rather just use it. So
Yeah. I was thinking the other day, actually. Okay, so this is a bit of a. I do need to go quite soon. This is just an aside. On open source licenses, it's like we've been recording these things forever. We put them up in the world. If you can like recreate what we've done, just using the videos, then you've got unlimited license. It's like, so it's like if you've gone through what we've gone through, yeah, you've earned it. Yeah. Type of open source license.
okay, so the SCOM will treat that separately because we can create that any way you like. I'm looking for agreement here that I should continue down this path and then register us a gateway.
Yes, certainly register the gateway. Delaware seems to be a reasonable choice if Stripe are happy with that. Certainly, tax-wise, it seems sensible. And the sooner we get that kicked off as a parallel process, the better, because God knows how long it's going to take to convince and go around.
Yeah, it could be a couple of laps around the buoy. All right, and it's that we want to go for the 3 modes of operation for our business model: consumption, construction, and trading. Storefront can come later. Like,
Yep.
if they're okay with consumption, then they'll be okay with storefront.
Yeah, we'll need some, I'm sure, some kind of wording around how do we do the supply chain auditing, and what's the governance around this network that you keep on talking about, that you rely on. But maybe we're
Yeah,
not going there.
maybe not. I mean, like, do you need to give the governance of how the internet is governed? Do they care
You
about
put a big, do the IBM thing and put a big cloud and just say stuff.
cloud stuff?
That was a brilliant move, but well, we'll see. Let's
Okay.
not give them. Let's not
All right, so
confuse them too early.
urgency compared to the testing framework. More urgent, less urgent.
This feels like a bit like a fire and forget, right? So
Like, get it going, and then
get
that's
it going,
right?
and then there's going to be.
Okay, do you agree that this is the business model of the Dreamcatcher?
Yes, I do.
What are we missing?
Well, we are missing layers of detail, but there's nothing incorrect about this.
This is how the money moves, right?
Yeah. I mean, we could layer up and add in contribution, attribution, all that kind of stuff, but they don't really care. So, yeah.
No one really cares, yeah. Okay.
Money flow. Yeah. That's the level we're dealing with. Yeah. Well, let's in answer to your previous question, let's get this kicked off, and then get back to testing.
Okay.
Once it's kicked off, because it's
Okay.
it's off over the fence, and
We'll
we
do
don't
that.
know how long it's going to take before anything comes back.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, that's
Oh, and we haven't gone into this, but I'm kind of very close to out of time here.
yeah, out of time, eh?
we-
Oh, well, why don't we just call it there? Because I gotta finish off my response here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Is there anything burning that you need on this, or for tomorrow?
Stories for not tonight, but stories for attribution. Stories,
Yeah.
stories. You're
That's-
currently in the
yeah.
mode of building the entities for attribution, and that is awesome. But the thing I need
will
is
generate-
stories.
Yeah, that will generate the seed of the stories, and then it's the human eye through it, as we did with the trucking app. But that was quite fruitful way of doing a good coverage of stories.
There's an interesting news story out from OpenAI. They have they've benched AI's ability to do actual code by treating GitHub issues as the prompt and the AI's output as the fix, and comparing it to the pull request that closed the issue. That's clever, right?
Yeah, I heard there were, well, was it these guys? There's certainly a few blog posts down this route about whether issues would actually fix themselves and get.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, the problem is always the value. It's not just a machine to solve every issue. Just identifying what issues are, it becomes everything.
Right, so 15 minute to 1 hour fixes. Look like this thing's clocking 50%. Like, that's pretty good, dude.
Yeah.
That's
I'm not
pretty
surprised
good.
about that at all. I'm on it, but not surprised. Yeah, because going back to a few months ago when I kept on banging on about Edge of Chaos, the Edge of Chaos bit is where the human comes in. If it can be done in automated sense reasonably, then it will be done over the next few years anyway. And I'm sure they're going to get to the point where they're just going to rattle through Git and just say, we'll solve all your problems. And then it will do that in an hour, and then turn around saying, anyone else got any problems? And where do the problems come from? That's where the human comes in at the edge of chaos. That's why stacks are so important.
Yeah.
That's quite cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll get on with it. But that's, I don't know. It feels weird. It's like, yeah, it makes sense that that's the business model, but it just feels weird to have it. It wasn't. I guess it wasn't what I thought it would be many years ago, but I can't fault it, not one bit. And it's nice and simple, and it fits. It fits with conventional definitions, so we don't alarm anybody.
It's also, I think, probably more palatable for arrays, because we're not talking about
Right.
being the network and all this
No.
stuff. We're just saying we
No.
can black box that up and here are the attributes of the network that we're going to
Yeah.
exploit.
Yeah. And then, so the SCOM is the thing we raise for, and we're like, this is the business model of the network powered by these gateways. And the SCOM is about raising the throughput of money through the gateways, getting revenue in, and then getting it attributed to the SCOM. And that's why you'd want to fundraise for us, and that's why listing as a public company, our value ought to be determined by the revenue throughput, and some multiple that allocates a certain amount to how many licenses the SCOM holds, because that's really the property that the SCOM is trying to acquire is licenses, and it's also trying to promote and increase the value of the licenses that it holds as well. So, yeah, that's a good venture. Anyway,
Okay,
that's all I got, buddy.
cool. Right. Just before we go,
Okay, mate.
what was it? What's with these sweeties with methamphetamine in that just arrived on your shores? Have you seen that?
Maybe I'll just turn the recording off for a second.